This teenage boy recently came to his father and stepmother's house for a short break after school. The husband admitted that it would be good for a man to stay at home to protect the children, as he often goes to faraway places for work. Usually, when the husband goes away for work, the responsibility of taking care of the children is given to his son and his wife. Poor husband, he's a fool. It was their own love they were taking care of, not the children. Surprisingly, even after the husband returned home, they did not stop their relationship. In fact, they strengthened it. During the day, this wife has a relationship with her stepson, and at night, with her husband. Wow, she is amazing. I named this old woman, the Woman Baser. Hello, my dear family. Peace be with you. Today, I have brought you the most popular movie called Queen of Hearts, which was released in 2019. My family, please help us by liking the video. Without wasting time, let's go to the movie. At the start of the movie, we meet Annie, who works as a lawyer. She just married a man called Peter, and this is their second time getting married. Annie has 2 daughters, and Peter has a son named Gustav. Peter loves Gustav a lot, but Annie wants to send him to boarding school because she doesn't want anyone to bother him right now. Peter takes Gustav to his house, and his 2 sisters give him a little gift, a keychain. But even after seeing the gift, Gustav still doesn't smile. The next day, Annie tells her sister about it, and her sister says she doesn't want Gustav to live in their house for too long. In the afternoon, when Annie gets home, she sees the same keychain outside her house. Annie realizes that Gustav has discarded it. When Annie walks into the house, she sees Gustav and Peter fighting, and she realizes their friendship is not good. In the evening, Peter informs Annie that he believes he made a major mistake in bringing Gustav to this place, but Annie advises him to be patient. Everything will return to normal gradually. When Annie arrives home the next day, she discovers that all of her precious belongings have gone missing. Seeing this, she phones Peter and tells him everything. Later, while she is washing Gustav's clothes, she finds the same items that were stolen the day before. This makes Annie realize that Gustav had taken the stuff from the house yesterday. But when she tells Gustav that she knows it all, at first, Gustav initially pretends to be innocent. But when Annie tells him to report the incident to the police, he admits his mistake. Annie assures him that she won't go to the police but warns him to be nice to everyone in the house. After this, Gustav follows Annie's instructions and begins to act nicely with the family. Seeing this change, both Peter and Annie feel happy. One day, Gustav brings home his girlfriend, Amanda, and introduces her to Annie. Afterward, he takes Amanda to his room, and they share a special moment together. Hearing Amanda's voice from outside bothers Annie, and she struggles to sleep the whole night. She then turns to Peter and tries to make him pay attention to her. The next day, the 4 of them, Peter, Annie, Gustav, and Amanda, go on a picnic. Later, when Annie is working, Gustav arrives and asks her to join him. She agrees, and they both take a bath together. Gustav and Annie start bonding more closely with the family. The following day, while Peter is chatting with some family members, Annie begins to feel bored. She starts dancing to the music to grab Peter's attention, but when Peter ignores her, she sits by herself. Gustav notices this and approaches her, asking her to go with him. Annie agrees, and they visit a club where people are talking and drinking. However, Gustav receives a message from Amanda and tells Annie that he needs to leave. Before he goes, Annie gives him a kiss, which makes Gustav feel a bit uneasy, though he doesn't say anything and sneaks away. That night, when Annie returns home, Peter gets mad at her for not taking her phone with her. After this, we see Annie constantly thinking about Gustav. When she can't sleep at night, she goes to Gustav's room and tries to charm him. At first, Gustav calms himself down, but eventually he gets too excited, and they share a special moment together. Afterward, Annie quietly returns to her room without saying anything to Gustav. The next day, Annie buys a laptop for Gustav. When she gets home, Peter gets upset and says, "Gustav is my child. I should have taken care of this." Annie explains that Gustav is their son now, and it doesn't matter who takes care of him. Hearing this, Peter agrees and feels happy again. Annie spends her days with Gustav and her nights with Peter. This arrangement means that whenever Gustav is home, Annie has private moments with Peter only when he's outside the house. One day, Gustav asks Annie some personal questions and writes down her answers. The next day is Annie's daughter's birthday, so they host a party at their house. Everyone is busy enjoying the celebration, but Gustav keeps getting closer to Annie. At one point, Gustav starts kissing Annie's neck, and Annie's sister sees it. Annie gets angry at Gustav because she's worried her sister will tell everyone. Annie's sister leaves the party early, which makes Annie feel even more upset. She scolds Gustav, and this makes him sad. Feeling hurt, Gustav climbs a nearby tree and jumps down. When Peter runs over to him, Gustav claims he can't move his legs, which makes Peter worry even more. Suddenly, Gustav starts laughing, revealing that he was just joking. However, Peter gets angry with him for the prank. That night, Annie and Peter talk about Gustav. Peter believes that Gustav hasn't fully accepted their family yet. The next day, Annie meets Gustav and tells him to stop everything and forget what happened between them. She insists that he shouldn't say anything to anyone. The following morning, when Annie returns home, Peter informs her that he and Gustav are leaving for a few days. He says it will give them some time together and also mentions. When Peter returns home, he informs Annie that his sister called, which makes Annie anxious. She fears that his sister will tell everyone about what happened. Later that evening, Annie's child begs her to accompany Peter, but Annie declines. Peter and Gustav then embark on their journey, and Annie becomes even more agitated. The next day, Annie visits her sister, but her sister refuses to speak to her. When Annie gets home, she's surprised to see Peter and Gustav, as they were supposed to be away for a week. Annie tries to avoid Peter's gaze, but Peter tells her that he plans to send Gustav to a boarding school. He also mentions that Gustav has told him everything. When Peter asks Annie if this is true, she denies it and says there's nothing going on. She believes that Peter is trying to break them apart, which is why he is making these accusations. Annie tricks Peter with her words, telling him about the theft to make him trust her. She also breaks the tape recorder that Gustav made. The next day, Peter tries to tell Gustav that it's not right to blame someone, but Gustav insists he is telling the truth. Later, Gustav talks to Annie about it, but she doesn't respond. When Annie later encounters Gustav, he spits in her face. She tells him that he can't stay there anymore, so Gustav decides to leave and go to boarding school. Annie's daughter feels very sad about this. Meanwhile, Peter drives Gustav to the boarding school and begins to miss him, feeling quite sad. One day, Gustav arrives at Annie's office and says he needs to tell Peter the truth. Annie tells him that he can't do that, but Gustav warns her that he'll go to the police. Annie, being a lawyer, tells Gustav that he can tell the police if he wants, but it won't help and will only cause him problems. Afterward, Annie tells Gustav that if he admits that everything he said wasn't true, he can return home with them. However, Gustav wants Peter to know the truth about Annie, especially that she has relationships with many other men, but despite wanting to, he can't do anything about it. One day, Gustav sneaks into Peter's house, but Annie sees him there. Gustav repeatedly asks her to listen to him, but Annie ignores him, forcing Gustav to leave. Shortly afterward, Peter receives a call from the school informing him that Gustav is missing. A few days later, Peter receives another call, this time from the police. Annie encourages Peter to accompany her to the police station, but Peter turns her down. When Peter returns home, he informs Annie that the police have discovered Gustav's frozen body in the snow. Annie sobs when she hears this, realizing that Gustav died alone in the snow. During this time, Peter places the blame on himself, as he feels that if he hadn't sent Gustav to boarding school, he wouldn't have died. Annie, too, understands deep down that she is somehow to blame for his death. Peter, realizing that Gustav was right all along, loses his temper with Annie. The entire family attends Gustav's funeral the next day. The movie ends here.